Hello, welcome. My name's Savallion or Alyssa, either works, and I am a software dev slash creative. Today I want to talk about Notion. Notion has been pretty popular for the past, year or so, maybe a little bit more. And incidentally, that's how long I have used it myself. But the big question is, what exactly is Notion? Because it seems like everyone uses it for something a little bit different. So Notion describes itself as a customizable workspace. They are, quote, more than a doc, more than a table. I think that's a good description, and I do still think it's a little bit vague. So how I explain it is that Notion is used to collect information and then also connect that information. So collect, connect. It has a lot of features like a Google Doc might have where you can just sort of type things in, make tables of information, tables of data. But then it also has some features to link these pieces of information together, to actually do calculations on it with some formulas, or to filter in ways that expose like which things are connected to which other things. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Notion is, and then we're going to flip around into a little screen share, and I'm going to show you how to do some simple things in Notion, get you started. Notion kind of has two concepts of how data is saved, and those things are pages and blocks. So everything is in a page. You have this sort of, top level list of all your pages, and then those pages can contain other pages, and those contain other pages, and so on, until Notion cuts you off at some point. I assume I've never reached any sort of cutoff there, but within those pages, everything is a block. So some examples of blocks are just text blocks, paragraph text blocks, header blocks, images, embedded videos, PDFs. I'm running out of fingers to count on. You can do like a web page preview, like a bookmark. You can link tweets directly into Notion. You can add audio. You can connect it to various other software for things like UI design. You can connect it to Figma. There's a lot of options built into Notion, and then there's also an API. So if you or someone else who has a similar need has coding skills, you can actually connect to Notion with code and just make it do exactly what you want. So pretty much anything you want to save in Notion you can, and it's fairly easy. There's also this concept of databases, which are a type of block that offer a unique functionality. It is a place where you can store individual records, and each of these records are pages, sort of under the hood, and each one has a set of properties attached to it. So like, for example, if I wanted to make a task database, which is what I'm going to be demonstrating later, I would have individual task records. Each one might be attached to a project tag. It might have a due date. It'll have a name, maybe a difficulty level, whether it's done or not. Each of these are properties on this task. You have a bunch of those. Each of the tasks has all these properties with individual values, and you can use the database to sort. You can use it to filter. You can use it to calculate like how many of the tasks are complete out of the total number of tasks. You can use it to calculate like how much time is remaining to do it. If you have that due date, you can calculate how many days are left or whatever. There's a lot of stuff you can do with the databases, and I'm not going to cover everything today because that would take a long time, and I don't even think I know everything you can do. Played with them a lot, I've experimented a lot, and I've watched a lot of other YouTube videos about them, but they're just so cool and so detailed that it takes a while to learn everything. So some of the use cases that people have used Notion for, like I said, it can really do anything that you want it to do as long as you sit down and think through like what that looks like. Some of the use cases people have for Notion are like a goal planner, task management, business management, business planning, collaboration with other team members, like a content system where you collect content ideas and then move them through the system to actually be worked on and published. Studying, you can write your notes in Notion. You can use it to collect any sort of research materials into one place and organize it there. Some people just use Notion for good vibes, like you put some nice calming images, a little inspirational note, maybe your tasks you want to do that day, and you're done. It's, like I said, very flexible. So now we're going to flip around to the demonstration and the screen share. I'm not going to make a new account. I have an account. I'm just going to make a new page. But you can install Notion from their website. It's notion.so. This is not sponsored or anything, but I will put a link just so you can get to it easier. But when you first create an account with Notion, you may see like some sample pages filled in, or maybe it'll ask you to pick a template or something. I'm gonna start with a blank page, so I will show you how to create that blank page if you don't have one ready to go, but we're gonna flip this thing around and get going. Okay, so this is what you'll see when you get into Notion and you have a blank page, is that you'll be able to add a title up top, and I can just change this to, you can also, for any page, you can add an icon, a cover. Comments are really more for team-based communication. I don't usually add comments because I work by myself. We got a snorkeling one by default. There's a tractor, a trap with some cheese in it. I've never seen this icon before ever. That's very funny. You can also change the cover. Maybe just do something like that. And if you want, the cover selection is linked right to Unsplash. So, it's just like a stock image website. It's totally, you can use any of the images in there that you want. Below here, you'll have how you want to sort of populate this page. I usually just start empty just because I like to build things up myself. I don't really use templates very often. Now, on the left here, you have your table of contents. So if you don't have a page to start with, if you go to the section where your private pages are, I have some favorites up here. Not really important. In fact, I'm going to close out a lot of this just because I think it can be a little bit distracting. But you can hit the plus here, add a page, and then you'll see what I'm seeing right now. But at any point, if you want to get to a page in Notion, you can find it over here. You have a hierarchy of pages. This one we haven't added any pages to yet, so it's empty, but it's right here at the top level. And anything that you want to add to Notion, you can find in a slash. So you do a slash, I think that's the forward slash. Let's say I want to add a page into this one. So this one is going to be any page. You can just sort of start typing. The text block is the default for any new page, and you can also automatically create some block types. So like there's one for a bulleted list. I just type a dash and a space. Here's a list, and it will continue like that. What are some other ones? There's headers with the like hashtag, pound sign, whatever you call it. I guess depends on how old you are. So a lot of this is just Markdown. If you've ever used Markdown before, it's just a sort of computer shorthand for what type of text you want to add. So this 2 hash marks is in heading 2. 3 is a heading 3, and it's slightly smaller, you can see. That was weird. I thought I heard a timer go off, but nope. It was just ghosts in the wires, I guess. Alright, these are kind of the basic text blocks. We can add an image, and I'm just gonna grab one from Unsplash. Let's just grab this nice flower. And these can be resized. And as I've been adding these, they just sort of line up down the page. If I want to create some columns, reorganize this stuff a little bit, you can see as I hover over these different blocks, they have this little plus and the dot icon, the 6 dots. The plus I can use to add a block beneath. So here's a to-do list or a checklist, I guess. And then this little dot one will allow me to drag this block, and you can see as I drag, there are other places I can put this. So if I want this to be alongside heading 1, I can just sort of drag it right over here. Sort of, it does look weird because this is a heading 2 and this is a heading 1, so they're spaced differently, but I can add things underneath. I can move the image over here. And this all needs to get moved up under this one. So once you have these columns made, you can drag the width of the column. And a lot of this is fairly intuitive, but as you work with Notion and move things around, you can really create a nice layout for whatever you're building. And another thing is you can change the type of the block after you've created it and like put content in it. So I'm bothered by how this heading is so much different than this heading. So I'm going to click this and click turn into heading 2. And so now they match. That was just something that was bothering me. If you want to change the color of things are sort of fixed. They have a set of colors that you can use, and if your color you want is outside of that, you'll have to use an image or something to get exactly what you want. But if I just use this dot menu again, we have color, and this will change the color. This color up here is the text color, this color down here is the background color, and this will change the entire block. So like if I want to make this one pink background, another thing is you can't do text and background, so it's one or the other. Kind of annoying. I don't love that, but it works. And then an interesting thing is that you can also select text and specifically change the color of that text. So if you wanted to highlight individual words, you do have to select it and use this little pop-up here. While I have it open, you can also add code tags. So this just gives it this like monospace look. Useful if you're writing documentation for some software, but you can also add a code block. So in here, we can do, you can pick the coding language and it will highlight somewhat correctly. I've noticed it can get a little bit weird with things that are usually part of a larger project. It can have a hard time figuring out like what exactly you're writing down, but they have a huge selection in here. And another cool thing is that the mermaid option actually will render out the charts that you can make in Mermaid, which I have played with. I've had a lot of fun with it. I know that Gregory has a wonderful tutorial video on using Mermaid to create flowcharts. I will try to remember to link that. In fact, I will write a note. But that can be really useful if you want larger blocks of code in your Notion documents. Just using, blocks, rearranging them, changing the colors, you can have a pretty flexible system as it is. And remember, we can always add either a whole page within this page. So if I add a new page, we have, I don't know, books. I was looking at my own stuff. This is where all my books go. Obviously, all this stuff is a demo. It's just made up off the top of my head. And we can see we have another books page. We can navigate back up. We can go back down. I usually like to build out sort of the hierarchy first and then put the content in just so I can make sure everything connects in a meaningful way. But really, I could move these up to YouTube demo page. Now the page lives up here. It's just added it right there at the end. Whatever you do, if you're not happy with it, you can just change it. Nothing is like permanent in a sense that you can't change it. So whatever you need, Notion can do that for you. And next, what I'm gonna do, so like I mentioned, you can just use this, you can take your notes, you can fill out your information, connect it all together, that's fine. We're going to take it a step further with databases. One thing to note is that you can add a sort of inline database, which means it lives in the page, it's not its own page. I don't like doing that because I like to have control over where it lives. I like to have control over how I'm viewing the database information. So what I like to do is here, I'm going to put this up top here actually. So you type /database, you can see there's several views that come up with this, and we're going to talk about those in a little bit, but don't worry about them now. And I'm just going to do full page. We have, by default, it gives you a table view. We can see it says table up here. I'm going to call this task database, or just, we'll keep things easy. I'll just call it tasks. there you go. So just an overview. Again, I mentioned this briefly before, but a database is just a special block that has multiple records of data within it that it can display, connect, filter, sort, whatever. So it's literally a central source of data. So, database, the name is descriptive, it makes sense. And each database can have a number of views. I don't know if there's a limit on how many views a specific database can have, but we have one currently. It's called the table view. It looks a lot like a spreadsheet or like a table you do in Microsoft Word or something like that. And then along the top here, we have these columns. These are the properties. So if I click on any of these, I can rename them, I can edit them. Another thing is that the name property is sort of non-negotiable. You can't hide this one. It does need to exist as a text property. So if I go to edit, it's not going to let me change the type. I can just call it something else. So like maybe task detail. The task detail is going to be what we call the task, what it is, like your entry for when you're making your tasks. And then by default, we have tags. That could be useful for a task database. I don't usually tag my tasks. So what we can do with any property that's not that name property is we can change it to a different type. And the types that we have available are text, number, select, and multi-select, which just mean there's certain options you can pick in a set underneath that property. Select, you can only pick one of them, and then multi-select, you can pick multiple. We also have date, person, which really only works if you're on a team with multiple people, files and media, checkbox, URL, email, phone, and then there's a number of advanced properties under here. I'm not going to cover any of these today, but this is where you'll find the formula relating this information to other databases, the roll-up, and then we also have some things like created time, created by, last edited time, last edited by. These can be useful for a number of things. So all of those are going to be down in the advanced section. So for my task database, I know I want that name, what the task is for. I'll want a checkbox of whether it's done or not, or maybe a status. I'll either want a checkbox or a select to determine whether it's done or not. So if you don't care about intermediate states, if it's just either done or not done, you would use the checkbox. If it's something that maybe like if you work in software, you usually have tasks go through certain phases. So like it's planned, it's been sized, it's been worked on, it's in review, things like that. So for that, you would want to use a select, and then you can add the options here. So like ready, or in progress, in review, done, stuff like that. And it assigns a random color to these. You can always change them. So like done would make sense to be like a green, maybe ready is like a yellow. And then I can always come in and change these if I don't like them, or rearrange them. So we've got that property. Let's put status in here, and we want to add more properties. I just have a couple more I want to add to my task database. We have a date. So let's say due date, and here you can format it if you want. You can also add times to your dates if you want. I haven't used that as much. I don't know how easy it is to use. And I think just as an example, let's do a number and then let's just do like value. I don't know. This is just to demonstrate how these different property types work. So don't use this as like a how to set up the best task database tutorial. I'm really just demonstrating how Notion works. All right, and then I think lastly I want to do, actually I think that's it. So if you have a property that you don't want that you created by mistake, you can just click delete. Just like that, it will make sure you're sure. And once I have these properties in here, I can change the size, I can change the order of the properties, I can do something like that. And then also by default, Notion adds a couple of empty items in here so that you can see what the view looks like before you put data in. So I can just start clicking in here. I could put this one as ready. This is to do something. Due date is today. And I'll just put a 3 there. I'll just do a couple of these. And you can also do is that you can turn on this toggle to add an end date, and then you have a time range. So this is the start, this is the end, so I'll do something like that. This is what it looks like here. And I'm just going to add one to this as well. So we have our table, we can resize, reposition. I've got my awesome coffee club mug today. One thing I want to mention is that the properties for your database items are the same for every type of item, but you can also have a page attached to your items. So by default, it doesn't go through that extra step of creating a page for the items, but if I click open as page, this creates this page content, and this can be different for each individual task. So up here we have our properties. Any changes I make to the property itself will affect all tasks, so be very careful when you're working with this. So like if I changed this from a number to like text, for example, and I go back out here, all of these are now text instead of a number. And it's fairly harmless going between text and number, but if you do more drastic changes, you can have some unforeseen effects. So the content here can be very powerful to use. So one thing I like to use this page content for is for game tasks. If I have specific things I want that task to do. Another thing I'll use the page content for is video planning. So I'll have a database like this with all the video ideas, and then within the video, I'll hit a button, generate a template, and it will have like an outline section, it will have a thumbnail section, maybe a title section, title, uh, title section. That way, because the content can be different from the parameters, the properties here, I can have different types of social media posts in one database, all with like due dates, names. I can add a property that's like which platform it's for. And then in the content, I can have each one have unique content based on what it is. So like the videos are treated differently than other types of social media tasks, but they can all live together so I can see all of them on a timeline or a calendar, which is what we're going to talk about next. So the data that's in here, like I mentioned, is sort of formatted the same for each item. We have the same properties, and we can view all of that in a different way just by adding a different view. So let's say I want to add a calendar. We were talking about like a content calendar. If I click calendar, we can pick which, if you have multiple dates, you can pick which date you want to use. I'll click done. And right now it's pretty bare bones, but if I go into properties, I can choose to show certain properties. So I can show a status, and then that shows up right down there. I can show the value, shows up right down there. This is all we really have. But if you have more properties, you can choose which ones you want to show in a given view. You can reorder them like this. And then if I want to add something to any view, I can just do it by clicking in that view. So in the table, we click down here, we can create a new thing, new task. We can also not give it a date. Watch what happens. It's obviously not on the calendar. We have this little thing, no date. We can see it and add it. It'll just add it to today. Then we can change it as we want, like that. So if something isn't showing up for you, check that little area up here. We can also filter stuff, and this works on every type of view. We can filter by any of the properties. So like let's say we want value and we want it to be like we only want to see stuff that's bigger than a 2. Maybe we want to be able to filter out like really high priority valuable items. that's one way you can do it. You can also have, let's see, what's like a good practical use case of this? I'm not sure. If we want to have a view where we're only seeing stuff that's not done, we can do status is not done. And if you have multiple statuses that sort of represent a state where it's done, like sometimes I'll add like a closed status where I didn't finish it, but I did decide to not do it anymore. You'll have to include both of those. And the way to do that, if you have multiple things you want to sort of combine into one filter, you can click on the filter, go to the little ellipsis and do add to advanced filter, and you can do where something and something else, or you can change this to or, so that means if either of these things is true, filter it. So where we want status is not done and like maybe not in review, maybe that's also considered done. So that's how you can filter things. We can do this for any of these. It doesn't make a lot of sense to filter on date for the calendar because the calendar is like necessarily connected to the date, but we've done a couple different views. There are some other ones in here. There's a board, which looks like a Kanban board or like a Trello board. If you've ever used Trello, you can drag it to different statuses and it will automatically change the status for that card. You can also change it to use a different property. So like if I want to group it by value maybe, which is really interesting. So like what numbers we want to group up. I guess by default it's 0 to 100, which seems really extreme. Let's say we want to group every, if we know we only have 5 as our highest number, we could do it by 5. You can adjust how you want to group things, how you want to sort them. If you want to hide empty groups, which can be really nice, I'll just do that. Color columns. Oh, that's fun. That looks like just a visual change that they did. There's also a list view. So if I want to add another one, list, this is very similar to the table view. It's just a little bit cleaner. There's not as many cells and like lines interfering. And I'm going to talk about another thing that's really cool that is somewhat new. They added this a few months ago, and that is the group feature. You can group your items in your database on a certain property. So if I want to group them by status, this creates a list that is separated by status. So it's very similar to the board view. It just gives you a different way of looking at stuff that maybe you'll find more useful or that you'll like, the aesthetics of a little better. So these are just a few different views you can set your database up to use. You can click between them, you can reorganize them, you can rename them, and let's just call this passport. There you go. So using these views intentionally, you can create, for example, I've seen a task list that had different tabs or different views for today's tasks, the week tasks, tasks that are coming up, things like that. You can do whatever you need to show valuable information and not sort of overwhelm yourself, because if you don't do any filtering and you start to get a lot of information in here, it can just really pile up. It can be hard to understand what you're looking at. Even if you sort it, which I don't think I did, but you can click on any of these properties to sort like that. You can also do multiple sorts, but you do need to do it on the existing sort. So if I click this and sort, it will just replace it. But if I go back and I click on the status sort, I can just add sort. And then we can also sort maybe by value. So then we have, it's in order by status, and then each status is in order by value. Very powerful tool. A lot of stuff you can do here. And lately I have been wanting to rework my Notion, rebuild it a little bit, and I thought about doing that on a video. So let me know in the comment if that's something you'd like to see. Me sort of building up some Notion areas from scratch. So the last thing we're going to cover, so say you have your database, we've got this task database, and you want to look at it from somewhere else. So you don't want to recreate the whole thing again. You want it to be connected to that original database. So I'm going to do this down here. I'm going to do /database, and I'm going to pick which view I want. I think I'll do a list view. And then from here, we can select the data source. And then we can also copy an existing view exactly if we want to. So I can copy the existing list view, I can copy the task board, the table, the calendar, or I can create a new empty view. So this will show the same data, but it doesn't have any filters on it. It just sort of loads in exactly what was in there already. We can add our own filters. Let's do, value. I'm just sort of making stuff up at this point. We can show only, let's only show the value property. So we have this, and this looks different than this. This looks a lot different. This has a grouping. It has the statuses on the side, but this is a separate view connected to the same data. So you can reuse the same data anywhere you want. And then if I change this, if I go, another something here is now potato, banana. I'm really reaching for the ideas here. If we go back here, we can see that has changed. All the data is connected, and a change you make anywhere will affect that original source, which can be really powerful. This was supposed to just be a brief overview of Notion. I think I got a little bit too excited about the databases in there, but that's pretty much everything you can do at a basic level. There's another sort of intermediate advanced skill set that you can learn if you want to get a little bit deeper into it, but this should get you pretty far. So that's going to be it for today. Please let me know if there are specific things in Notion that you want me to talk about, you want me to play with, explain a little bit more, because I love Notion and I've been wanting to do more videos about sort of like productivity software. I just love exploring these fun apps, and I have been personally using Notion for a long time, so I thought it was time I talked about it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was useful for you. I hope you have as much fun working with Notion as I do, and that's gonna be it. So, thank you again. I'll be back soon with another video, and I hope to see you there. Bye bye.